Good evening, everybody.
Turn on your microphone.
I just did, I think. Good evening. Let me call to order the meeting of the St. Helena City Council for February 10, 2015. And since I'm going in alphabetical order,
There's no sound. It's being turned up. There is sound.
all right. Mr. Pitts, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ms. Black, roll call.
Mayor Galbraith?
Who'd you start with?
Mayor Galbraith?
Oh, here, yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Here.
Councilmember Doring?
Present.
Kroll? Here. Pitts?
Here.
Now, the City Council met this evening in closed session beginning at 5 to about 5:30, and I think I can say that there is no reportable action. Fair enough?
It's fair enough, and the City Council did meet to discuss that item designated on today's agenda as item 2A. That's conference with legal counsel, matter of anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2, significant exposure to litigation in one potential case. And as the mayor indicated, there was no reportable action taken.
All right. That brings us to the next item, which is public forum. Members of the public are entitled to address the council on matters not otherwise on our agenda, and we limit the time to 3 minutes. And then, in terms of the council itself, it's not allowed to respond really directly to public comments, but of course we can put items that are raised on the agenda down the road. So let me begin with public comment, and please state your name and your address.
My name, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. My name is Robert Cobb. I live at 908-2 Terry Lane in Key West, Florida. I own 1366 Monte Vista. It's a 6-unit apartment building in St. Helena. I've owned it for a number of years. I would like to create workforce housing. And workforce housing would cater to people basically like your city clerk, like people who work in the fire department, like people who work throughout the city, some of the retail merchants in the city also. I own the building, so we already have control of the land. The property is there and can be very easily renovated. There are county funds in terms of money for a down payment, and there are also private funding for down payments. I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Luce over the last year and a half, and he tells me there are many different ways to approach this particular situation. It seems to me like it's the perfect time for workforce housing. And why is it? Well, because of the money that's available for the grants for people to put down on the housing, and this is for people who actually work. Also, as I said, there's private money, but I want to give you a few little numbers, and these are from the CBO, and that's the Congressional Budget Office. Since 2008, the middle class has lost 40% of its net worth. Since 2008, there are 5 million less full-time jobs. Since 2008, quantitative easing has increased the cost of housing and reduced the buying power of the middle class by 5 to 7%. And as a perfect example of this, I'd like you to take a look at the property at 730 Hunt at Monte Vista. That property has recently sold. It sold in this city for $1,824,000, and that was $304,000 a unit. The rent on that particular property is $2,000 a month, and it will go up. Now, the problem that is going is rental housing is becoming too expensive for most people who are in the workforce. And so the opportunity is now, if you want to do anything, to freeze a piece of property. Otherwise, the market will carry it up. I have a solution for this particular problem, Because what the problem is that you have an ordinance in St. Helena that does not allow the conversion of existing multifamily housing. And I'm suggesting that I would like you to consider changing that ordinance, modifying it, amending it, so that income restrictions for the workforce housing will be allocated to convert to create ownership. That's fee simple title. If you want any more information on that, I'd be happy to give it to you. It's very doable. I've talked over the number situation with Mr. Luce. This particular property would qualify. I have the financing. It isn't a question we have to run out there and find someone to do it. Another alternative that I have,
You're going to need to complete your statement because you're running over
is
the
that
3 minutes.
a nonprofit could end up buying this house in order to keep it in the workforce range. Because if you don't do that soon, there isn't going to be any affordable workforce housing, not only here, but nowhere else either in the area. The cost of everything is going up, and it's dragging the rents up too high for most people. Thank you very much. I hope that you are interested in this, and if you are, I will leave some more cards with the treasurer. And if you could contact me, because I'd like to work with something. The alternative is that it will ultimately just go up on the open market, and it will be, for sale, and it'll go like the one on Hunt Street down the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cobb.
Thank you.
Sure Mr. Carniglia was taking some notes here. Thanks again. Mr. Ellsworth, would you state your
Hi,
name and
Jeff
address?
Ellsworth, 1434 Sylvaner. I have been, in relation to the Davies project, re-looking at the small winery ordinance tapes, and I have a huge problem with what happened here. I wrote a letter to the Star last week talking about how the genesis of the small winery ordinance. I made a timing error in my statement in the newspaper, saying that on the April 16th, 2013 meeting, the minute the issue starts is 50:30. It actually starts 45 seconds earlier at 49:45. One of the planning commissioners introduces an idea for some legislation to change our winery code. It's not based on anything. It's not based on anything but a trend in the wine industry for direct-to-consumer marketing. On the county level, I've been going down there for a year looking into this. That's not based on anything either, but somebody's idea. No EIRs were done, no studies to the impacts. Sharon Kroll caught it at the small winery thing, saying this is going to affect the zoning all over our town and could potentially make all our residential ag areas commercial. There are 15 groups around the county fighting these things on their country roads. Direct-to-consumer marketing centers. So it uses the guise of agriculture, but they're making all this money from bringing in heavy, heavy tourism. If you live in a little residential area, you bought your home with the zoning as residential, and all of a sudden now you're in a commercial zone, and there's nothing you can do about it, except stand together with everybody else who's dealing with it. We've got a new project in town that's on the 29 corridor. Now, it takes a little tweak in the zoning in that to make it work. So we're all standing together as a county coalition, and we're standing up and we're saying, you know what? We didn't get to vote in this. The impacts were not studied. The EIRs were not done. And we're not going to take it. So I just want you to know that we're standing up as a county, and we're saying this thing that happened, and I'm not saying anybody did it on purpose, but it wasn't studied. And this thing, right over here on this corner, the fact that no EIR was done on a project this big, that it looks at the zoning differently, and it didn't address that. The fact that no cost-benefit analysis was asked for by the Planning Commission or the City Council, it's unacceptable. I just found an email regarding the project from October 29th talking about plans for an 81-seat food service thing. I've got no idea what that means. I'd like an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellsworth. Again, under the Brown Act, we're not allowed to comment on public comment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pat Dell. I had virtually no expectation of speaking to you tonight, but when I walked in, there was a gentleman talking about affordable housing, which is my passion. We read in our house the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and I have a stack of articles about the measures that have been taken in Sonoma County to pursue funds to build affordable housing. I'd be glad to share those with anyone here whenever they want to look at them. But one in particular is what I want to mention here tonight, and that is that the city of Healdsburg, which is a city quite similar to ours, has engaged, I would assume, an outside service, a consultant, to do a series of workshops for their city council, planning commission, and the citizens of St. Helena about what are the things that you have to do in order to build affordable housing. I know that we hire consultants here a lot, and I would like to encourage us to call the city of Healdsburg and find out who is doing that workshop for them and to see if that might be appropriate for the city of St. Helena. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dow.
Thank you.
Further public comment? All right. Next on our agenda is reports by staff and city council, future agenda items. So let's begin with staff. Ms. Phillips?
I have nothing, thank you.
All right. Cindy? Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak about the storm we had over the weekend. It brought us about 5 inches of rain. I just wanted to publicly recognize the public works staff that came in over the weekend to help clean up some downed trees and restore some power outages. We had problems with some facilities, so that's all.
Well, that recognition is well deserved. So far, we've gotten through 2 major storms without material damage to city infrastructure, and it helps when city crews are here over the weekend. Thanks so much. All right. Members of the council, any?
I just would like to add as a future agenda item, whether a discussion of whether we want to have a townwide cleanup day like they do in Yountville, because if we do want to do that, we need to get on Upper Valley Waste Management's schedule sooner rather than later.
All right. Ms. Black, did you get that down? Okay. Mr. Pitts?
One quick thing, and I'm not sure, I don't know if the police department's heard about this, but on Stockton Street, we had 2 cars and 2 different properties that were ransacked, I think 2 nights ago, and some iPods were stolen out of the cars. This has happened in the past with some kids. City may already be aware of it, but lock your cars, that way they can't ransack your cars.
And obviously, iPhones and iPads should be hidden.
Did they catch
I don't think so. I don't know, but
right.
I'm sure they're working on it.
As for me, I would just make mention that a number of us, myself, the vice mayor, met with Congressman Thompson and his senior district representative, Brad Honorato, along with the city manager and Ms. Mitz and Police Chief Jackie Rubin and Lieutenant Bill Imboden on Friday. We had an interesting and good discussion with respect to a couple of projects where there could be further federal involvement. And we also, of course, talked about the training that the lieutenant received at Quantico, which was of great interest to the congressman. So it was a very good session that we had in terms of the federal projects, the issues related to the flood project, and also to an issue of reimbursement with respect to FEMA going back, I think, to the 2005 flood. So those would be my comments. The next item are consent items, and I'm going to go through these one by one. And again, if any member of the public wishes to take an item off of consent, please let me know. It's not just the council, but also the public that can take an item off of consent, and that's why I go through it one by one. But if anybody wishes to take an item off of consent, please speak up at the point where I mention the consent item. All right. Number 8. consideration of a resolution accepting the work and directing the filing of the notice of completion for the St. Helena wastewater treatment and reclamation, CIP number S60. 9.
So, do you want to go through them all, or at the end of that, if no one wants to pull it, should we move for approval, or do you want to do them in a group?
I'm going to go through them one by one to see if anybody wishes to pull it.
Okay, but if
including-
nobody does, do you want to move approval of that one?
We'll do it as a group.
Okay.
A group at the end. No, I don't. I just want to be sure the public has a chance, particularly to cause any item to be pulled. Okay. Consideration of a resolution awarding a successful bid and authorizing purchase of a new utility truck for the fire department from Zumwalt Ford in the amount of $42,170 plus change. Anybody? All right. 10, designation of county health officer as the City of St. Helena health officer. 11, contract in the amount of a maximum of $88,590 to retain the environmental planning consulting firm of Urban Planning Partners to update the environmental impact report previously prepared for the proposed Hunter project, which consists of a subdivision application for 51 single-family residential lots and a 3.4-acre parcel for multiple family site. Okay, we're going to pull that one. So 11 will be pulled. And can I have a motion with respect to items 8, 9, and 10?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Ms.
I'm
Bott?
sorry, I need to see who made the first.
Greg.
Okay, and the second? Everyone spoke at one time. Okay, Doreen. Councilmember Pitts,
Yes.
Doreen,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. Now, with respect
Mr.
to...
Mayor, I think your mics might be a little too close together, and maybe that's why we're getting a little ringy.
Okay, sooner or later,
I can hear it, but
I will get this right. It may take 2 years, but... All right, with respect to item 11, can we have a staff report? And Mr. Carniglia is the staff person on it.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, I'll just summarize briefly what this item involves. As indicated in the description, this relates to the Hunter project and the existing environmental impact report. We're looking at retaining a consultant, the same consultant that prepared the previous or the existing EIR. The total cost is $88,590. Just like to emphasize that entire cost will be paid for by the applicant, and the consultants will be working for the city and reporting to the city, not to the applicant of the Hunter project. And just to add, any city staff costs attributable to this item, for instance, simply bringing this to council tonight, are also billable to the applicant. So just as some background on that. In terms of the actual scope of work, there really are, there's 4 or 5 kind of main tasks. Some of the tasks involve updating specific analyses, specifically traffic. Proponents of the Hunter project have proposed the idea of a traffic signal at Pope Street and Silverado Trail. And to analyze that proposal, a detailed traffic analysis will need to be done. There already has been some preliminary work that's been done, and that needs to be followed up with a more detailed analysis. Some of the information in the EIR needs to be updated, particularly information relating to water and the drought, so that's more of an update. Also, information as it relates to air quality impacts. I believe the project had construction level impacts, and the proponents are looking at utilizing equipment that meets the latest air quality standards. The scope is also going to, it was my understanding that when the previous draft EIR was circulated and then comments were made and there were responses to the comments, that a number of commenters felt that the responses in the final EIR were not comprehensive, adequate, and/or didn't really address the specific questions or issues raised. So part of this scope will be to look at the responses that were previously prepared and supplement those as needed. So that concern or issue will be ameliorated as much as we can. And lastly, by doing this work, so instead of having a whole different set of documents, so we'll have the original draft EIR, a final EIR, and then kind of a supplement to that. A lot of the information that was embodied in the final EIR will be brought into the draft in a sense. So we'll have essentially compressing the or collating is probably the best way to describe it, the information. So we'll have one updated draft EIR and final EIR, so we won't have a problem with multiple documents. This whole process obviously is challenging enough just with the normal set of documents without any document proliferation. So in a nutshell, that's the scope of work that's involved. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, let me open it to public hearing.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for this opportunity. John Milliken, 1256 Hudson Avenue. That was in a nutshell, and that's basically reading the report to City Council in here. Other than maybe Peter and Sharon, I've been actively involved in this EIR for going on 5 years now. So there's not a lot of institutional knowledge about the history of this EIR going forward. And I have some real concerns. I do think that there needs to be more analysis, as stated right here. But as far as some of these things that we're trying to identify and we're trying to put more study in and fold into the EIR that's close to 4 or 5 years old already, I have some real concerns about that. It seems almost as if we're embarking on a second EIR when we've never finished the original EIR. And part of the problem with this second EIR, it's been kind of an opaque process. The public has really been excluded from what's going on with the second part of the EIR. Let's back up to October of 2013, which is a long time ago. The Planning Commission was scheduled to hear on November 5th hearings on the FEIR, okay? And right before that was supposed to happen, the applicant said, I want to pull that from the agenda. And, well, fine. They said, we want to pull that from the agenda because we want to talk about another traffic study that has the light on the Silverado Trail, which I don't really even know if that's possible. And they had some misgivings about the air quality and also the loss of agricultural land. And so it took well over a year to convince the applicant to undertake these studies. And they started last spring, and they're not done now. And in the meantime, there's been $450,000 spent on consulting fees getting to the EIR where it is now. And it's nowhere near being done. And so a lot of my concerns have to do with the council approving this and continuing down the same road in a very confused state. And my main concerns are basically that in October of 2013, the public has never been able to weigh in on the FEIR. And also between the DEIR and the FEIR, there was a 13-month lag between where the public could actually comment. And we generated several hundred pages of comments by legal firms and analysis. And to the point where Urban Planning Partners asked for $74,000 more to analyze all these comments. Well, the FEIR came back with the same exact 3 things that could not be mitigated in the original DEIR. I don't understand how this is possible. It's as if all our comments were totally ignored. Also, the applicant never raised these 3 things that we're talking about during the comment period from the DEIR to the FEIR. And so they raised them actually after the FEIR was scheduled to be before the Planning Commission. So in essence, they said, well, we got problems with this original EIR. We want to do a new one, and that's going to go. So I don't know how we're going to fold all this together. I think we've been ill-served by Earning Planning Partners and Jerry Haig in this whole process that's taken 5 years and cost $500,000. And the thing is just in utter confusion. And
Can you bring your comments to a close, please?
And the public has been locked out of this second round of EIR since October of 2013. We have no idea what they're studying, what the comments are going to be, and things like that. So I ask you to slow down and get some more clarification before we keep going down the same road of how this new study is going to fold into the original unfinished one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milliken. Mr. Carniglia, do you have any further response? And in particular, once the new study is done, will there be an opportunity for public comment with respect to the supplemental document that comes in?
Or with respect to everything.
Or with
Right,
respect to everything,
right.
Yes.
And I appreciate the comments. I mean, it is a complicated, confusing process and frankly, frustrating process. The whole point of doing this study is to bring things to a head, literally. As was indicated, the applicant, kind of at the 11th hour, raised a number of issues. In essence, in doing so, they modified their project kind of on the fly. From a city point of view, then we need to analyze that. There have been some analyses that have been done to date. The whole focus then of this exercise is to bring all of that together into as few and as easily understandable documents as we can. It's in no way, shape, or form a new EIR. The intent is to update what needs to be updated and analyze what is new that the applicant has proposed. And primarily, that's the idea of the signal at Pope and Silverado Trail. Once that work is done, then the documents will be put out for public review as required by state law. All parties will have a chance to review, and then we'll be in a position to finally get closure on this issue. We should be in that position, barring very unlikely, but who knows, some other project change. But in a nutshell, the whole purpose of this effort is to get to the finish line with the environmental analysis.
All right.
So will this...
Wait, but just a minute. I should have asked whether there was any further public comment before turning to Mr. Carniglia on this issue. Go ahead, Ms. Sorry, Peter.
My name is Bobby Monad. I'm speaking as a citizen. I didn't have one, but I just want to make sure I understood what you just said. Did you say that after the work is done on the signal on Pope Street, then the public will be brought in as opposed to before the work is done? Did I understand that correctly or not?
That's correct. What is being done is an analysis of the viability of a signal at Pope and Silverado Trail. It's a complicated issue. We're going to be looking at a whole number of factors. And as with any technical analysis or environmental analysis, it's complete, and then that consists of information. Then that is brought to the Planning Commission, City Council, public to review. At that point in time, the public, commission, council could ask any questions concerning that analysis, request other things be looked at, question assumptions, etc. But you are correct. The study needs to be done, and the focus is on a technical analysis of that proposed signal.
I see. You said after the work is done. I thought you meant the actual putting in the signal.
Oh, no.
Okay,
Oh, no.
Thank you.
No, okay.
I'm sorry. That's the last thing I intended to communicate. But I'll have to choose my words more carefully.
My name is Grace Kistner, and my only question is, are you going to recirculate the whole EIR like it's a new one?
We have yet to cross that bridge. I think as a matter of thumb or general rule, the more recirculation, the better, and it's difficult to recirculate something and say, you can look at this, but you can't look at that. as a practical matter, there is a whole body of legal requirements in state law relative to when recirculation is triggered or not. So the best answer I can give is once we have the analysis, then we will determine what is going to be recirculated. I can't promise or say at this time the entire document will be, but I can say that in terms of full disclosure and open participation and all of those things, it's best to do a full recirculation.
All right. Is there any further public comment? And then I'll close public comment and open this up.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just offer a clarification as well.
Sure.
The speaker, Mr. Milken, had suggested that roughly $500,000 has been spent. It does bear repeating that that money is paid by the applicant and not by the city. The city is not out of pocket for those funds.
Right. All right.
So my question was, would this be coming back to the Planning Commission as a draft EIR again, or as a final EIR that would limit the scope of the public comment? Which I guess is the same thing that you keep.
I'm not sure, and defer to the attorney on this. In essence, if we recirculate, it's treated as a draft document because it's being commented on.
Mm-hmm.
So for all intents and purposes, the thing would be treated as a draft and then commented on. Okay. It's not going to be an entirely new document, just to make that clear, but it's going to be updated with new information about specific topics.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
It seemed to me that the rub between, the time that the draft went out and then the final EIR came back, and like what Mr. Milliken was just saying, that there was, it seemed to the public that there wasn't a lot of addressing of the issues or that had come up in the draft EIR, and they were coming back in the FEIR as almost the same document. That those things I think need to be vetted out to where it's not.
As I mentioned, part of the scope includes revisiting some of those items where the responses in retrospect may have been a little too cursory, and providing more details to those. And I think Mr. Milliken has an excellent comment. If you end up with a huge amount of time between a draft and the final document, you kind of lose continuity in the whole purpose of what you're trying to achieve. In the end, it's information to decision makers, and if that gets spread too long over time, it doesn't function as well as it should. So obviously, it's not my intent to come back to you in 13 months with the completed document. It'll be much sooner than that.
Good.
Okay, good.
Can you speak just a bit for the public to the genesis of the traffic light? And is that Caltrans jurisdiction? Is it our jurisdiction?
The genesis revolves around the analysis that showed that the intersection at Pope and Silverado Trail would not handle the projected project and cumulative traffic. So what the applicant is asking or raising the question, if there was a signal there or some other kind of traffic control like a traffic circle, would that mitigate the traffic impacts? Obviously, to look at that, the applicant's going to have to commit to pay for the full cost of that, not just some fair share. Jurisdictionally, the entire legs of a signal are in the jurisdiction of the city. But clearly, we'll need to coordinate closely with the county. It's mostly a county road. And Steve, the city engineer, Steve Palmer, has already had some communications, and they've already raised some issues and concerns. And I think another... am I getting too detailed?
Well, the concern we have is that the Brown Act requires us to agendize what we're going to discuss this evening, and the only thing that's been agendized this evening is the additional contract. the issues that we're starting to penetrate here go to the environmental process, for which there is a state law environmental process. That the document will be prepared in accordance with CEQA. At least that is the intent, the city's intention, and that document will be subjected to public review in accordance with CEQA. But for us, we can't really get into that tonight, both for purposes of the Brown Act, which for which we haven't agendized this, but also because the project applicant has fair hearing and due process rights, and they really do need to be involved in any substantive discussion of these issues.
Except that we're authorizing money for a study, and part of that study has to do with the traffic report and the contemplation of a traffic signal. So it doesn't seem like it's out of the range of what's on the agenda.
We can't go too far afield into the substance of that decision as to whether what the scope of that is. That's what is before you tonight is simply the decision whether to grant a contract to conduct the environmental review that's required by state law. And
Okay,
we've advised, and the consultants on the project have advised staff that this project revision proposed by the applicant requires additional environmental review. The public has insisted on that and would insist on that as well. That's all that this contract is doing, is initiating that additional environmental review as to, among other issues, the signalization potentially of that intersection. The substance of that, all of the impacts are what will be studied as a result of this additional study.
So what I was asking for was really just the facts behind the genesis of it. I don't really intend to discuss the merits of whether a traffic signal makes sense there or not.
That's perfectly appropriate.
And, okay, but I think we got most of the information at this point.
Okay, well.
I guess I just was wondering on the timing, because a traffic impact study done in March can be very different than a traffic impact study done in October here, based on our visitor and truck traffic and harvest and our seasonal work. So I would hope that it just says here that it's going to take 6 to 10 weeks to complete. It doesn't seem that a traffic study that is done in the next 6 to 10 weeks would be meaningful.
It would certainly be appropriate for staff to work with the consultant to address that and other issues.
Okay.
So that's what I would say, I do not think that I would authorize the money, but I don't think that unless the traffic report studied the traffic in the fall, it would be completely inadequate.
Well, I don't think we're in a position tonight to prejudge that at all.
I know, but I think I would caution them to wait and not do the traffic study, not do this study within the next 6 to 10 weeks.
Well,
Just as a point of information, I know we're not discussing the details, but there has been counts done out there already. So there has, as I kind of alluded to briefly, there has been some work done to date, and that work includes current counts. So we already have some of that information, but it's a good point. We'll be sure that any of those counts are adjusted to reflect what the peak would be based on the seasonal differences in traffic.
okay. Is there any further council discussion? Then the chair would entertain a motion to approve
Number 11?
number 11.
Yes. So move to approve 11.
Is there a second? The chair will second it.
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith,
Yes.
Councilmember Doring,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Pitts.
Yes.
Okay. Then that takes us to new business, and the first item is consideration of appeal from David and Ellen Deal for their April 14th, 2014 water meter reading billing in the amount of $888 and a reimbursement for leak detection services for $345 at 2260 Spring Mountain Road. And Ms. Mitz.
Okay, thank you very much. What the background on this is, on April 21st, 2014, the city received an appeal from Ellen and David Deal disputing their April 2014 water bill, and they cited a meter malfunction. 134 units were used during this time during this time period for a total of $888.24. The Deals are seeking reimbursement of a total of $1,233.24 for water usage and also a reimbursement for the leak detection services. On May 15th, the request was denied by the city based on research conducted showing the meter was functioning accurately. The discussion on this is the property, on average for a one-year basis, it uses 5.08 units of water per month. 1 unit of water is equal to 748 gallons or 100 cubic feet. On April 7th, the meter reading took place, and it was just during our normal routine. And when it came back to us, it showed that there's 134 units that were being used. And if we see anything that is abnormal, they automatically go out and reread the meter the next day. So when our city staff went out the next day and reread the meter, it showed that it used 10 units in one day. So it did look like there was some type of leak on the property. Our staff did contact the Deals, asking them, letting them know that they have a high usage, and then asked them if they wanted us to turn off the meter, in which we did. City staff turned off the meter on April 8th, at which the city staff verified the accuracy of the electronic meter read, confirming the electronic also matched the mechanical meter read. And a week later, on April 16th, the staff read the mechanical and electronic meters again, and it still showed the same usage. So it didn't move from that point because the water was still turned off. And a little bit about the mechanical and the electronic register is what we do is when our staff goes out on site, they do verify that the two meter readings match. A mechanical runs similar to an odometer on a car. There's no way that can run slower or faster than it is detected, and so they looked at the mechanical. The mechanical is reading fine, and it matched exactly what the digital said. On April 14th, city staff spoke with the caretaker gardener for the property and was told that a toilet valve had been stuck open during the period of unusually high usage. Since then, we've looked at previous and then future usage, and that's returned back to normal. It was just during that one particular month of the high usage.
All right. Any initial questions of staff by council? Then let me open the...
I have a question.
Sure.
So we turned the meter back on, and it was functioning perfectly.
Yes, that is correct.
Correctly. And have we ever had an instance where a meter has malfunctioned and spontaneously repaired itself?
No, we haven't. Not that I have heard of. And the only time that we've ever had a meter malfunction, it was when the digital didn't match the mechanical. And always in those cases, it goes in favor of the customer.
Okay.
I have one question, Mr. Mayor. Maybe it's for Steve or April. So there's a period where they did the testing and it showed that there were 10 more units being used. And it looks like that's about 7,480 gallons of water over that period of time. And so our best guess is that it could have been a toilet leaking for that period of time. And I guess the common sense question to me is there a standard out there, or do we have any information, a database that shows, when a leaky toilet is used for a 24-hour period, that would be roughly about 7,480 gallons. I mean, are they close or is it way off? I just the common sense, because I have no idea what that gallonage would be over a 24-hour period on a running toilet.
Right, and I don't have the number off the top of my head. I'm trying to run through some things in my head. A shower is like 2 gallons a minute, 3 gallons a minute. So, if you had a faucet on or something on, it's a lot of water that can come through there. I mean, it seems like it's not a lot, but
Different toilets are
over time. Over time it adds up. As it's 40 pounds of pressure.
Because I didn't do the calculation.
So if it's 7,480, right, divided by 24 hours, that's 311 gallons per hour. If you divide that by 60, it's 5 gallons per minute. If it's a 1.7 gallon toilet, you're flushing it 3 times in a minute. It's every 20 seconds.
Okay.
So it's not that far off. I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, I had a I had a situation like this myself.
But why don't we open the public hearing and hear from the Deals if they wish to talk to it.
Thank
Good.
My name is David Deal. That is our home on 2260 Spring Mountain Road. With me tonight is my wife Ellen and Ishmael Alfaro and his daughter Erica. Ishmael watches after our property when we're not here. We're not a permanent resident here, but we try to spend as much time out here as we can, as you might imagine. What I want to give you a little color on here, and if you don't mind sharing, this is a history of our water usage, and you'll notice if you train your eye to the lower left side, you'll see that big, huge orange stick shoot up there, and that's the month in question here, April of last year. You can see that, just to give you a little more detail, our average monthly water bill is about $70 a month, okay? And you can go back a long way, and ever since this month in April, it's been about $70 a month. And this month, as was mentioned earlier, oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
As was mentioned by April, this water bill in question was almost $900 for the month. That's like 1 year's worth of usage for us. And I'm going to show you, if you don't mind, the usage since then. And you can see that it's gone back to normal. And so we too were shocked about this. Okay. I just wanted to give that to you. We were pretty shocked by this, and on the day we got a call, I'm gonna walk you through the chronology here a little bit of what happened on that day. We received a call from the St. Helena Water Department and stating that our meter was spinning. Okay, Steve, and an independent inspection by Ishmael determined that there was no leak. There was no leak. There was no water dripping out of the house or from anywhere. Upon a second closer inspection, the St. Helena Water Department, including Juan Diaz, your employee, along with Ishmael and Erica, went to the house and again determined there was no leak. Okay. Then we hired and paid for a professional leak detection company to come out, and as you may know, they under high pressure, they test all the lines going from that meter to our house and all the lines around the house. There was no leak, okay? We've been accused of having a leak, and there was no leak, all right? So we're here to tell you that there was a malfunction in the meter, and as was stated previously, the meter was turned off. It was seen spinning and it was turned off. Then we went back and turned it back on and it was not spinning anymore. Okay? So I'm here to tell you that that was a malfunctioning meter. We are good, upstanding citizens here in St. Helena and we want to do the right thing. But I'm here to tell you there was no leak. And we're asking for an appeal here to use some reasonable judgment here and treat us fairly in this matter.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Deal.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? Then I'll close the public comment and let me begin with Mr. White.
I just have one question. Were you in?
We've closed the public comment.
Well, I mean,
you want to ask?
He's a witness.
So. All right. Well, come back to the podium, please.
Need to ask Mr. Deal.
We'll reopen the public.
Were you at the house or at the property any time during that month that
we were there earlier, and every time we come.
Earlier meaning prior to that month that you had the high
the
meter
previous
reading,
date
or?
was.
We were en route. We were on the plane when we got the call.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean.
But he wants to know how often we're coming out.
Well, during that period, were you at the house at any time?
No.
Okay.
No, and when we leave, we turn off all the water to the house. So the idea of a leaking toilet, I understand that, but that's why we turn it off all the time. All the sinks, all the toilets. Ishmael went out there, and I've got a signed affidavit with me, which you have a copy.
Yeah,
we
we
have
saw
presented that to you. And there was nothing, none of the valves were open. It's not possible that there could have been a leaking toilet.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question also, sir. I just want to clarify what you mean when you turn off the valves. For example, on the toilet, you go down onto the floor and you turn that water completely off on each of the toilets in the house?
Yes, sir. All the sinks, all the toilets.
During the period of time in question, this April to March period, did somebody else have access to the home for cleaning or for maintenance or for other uses? Anybody else? Because I know your witnesses apparently are the caretakers. Are there others like them that may have cleaned the house during that period of time?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll close the public hearing now. Thank you very much, Mr. Deal.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
That was it.
Oh, do you have, well, I'm opening the discussion. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to it. I mean, it sounds to me like it's he said. I mean, if Juan stated in the that he had talked to Ishmael, and he suggested a leaky toilet, but then in the affidavit he says that it wasn't. I don't know.
All right. Scroll.
Want my
Sure.
thoughts?
Sure.
So this does also seem like a he said, she said. So it's a, but I think at the, to me, the evidence shows that there was a leak, and that because our meters don't just repair themselves when you turn them back on, and I think that this is, it's unfortunate, and sometimes these things happened. It happened to me too. And you just have to fix it. And it doesn't seem like the taxpayers of St. Helena should be burdened with the fact that that a toilet accidentally malfunctioned or whatever. And so I think I would deny the request for appeal.
Mr. Pitts?
So just to be clear, we went and measured over a 24-hour period, and 10 units were used during that 24-hour period. And so that high usage with no one in the house is because of something using that water. I mean, that's just fact to me. That's black and white. There's no he said, she said. There was a problem. I don't know what the problem was, but there's a problem there. So I'm going to go with Sharon on this, and I can't in good judgment pass that on to the St. Helena taxpayers.
Mr. Doring?
My natural inclination is to try to be just and try to find a reason to help out a consumer, a good citizen of St. Helena. But I don't see enough evidence here to show that the meter was malfunctioning, and that was critical to me. I read every word and every piece of information that we got, and I was struggling to find something to help you out here. But I agree with Greg that appears that, I don't know if it was, I would not call it a leak, but some kind of an uncontrolled water situation. And we'll never know that for sure, but that's my gut level. But on the face of it, I don't see anything that persuades me that there was evidence of a malfunctioning meter. And to me, that's the most important fact. Without that, I unfortunately could not support your appeal. So I'm sorry.
The chair's thoughts are as follows. First of all, the city staff has recommended that the appeal be denied. And to my way of thinking, in a situation like this, the recommendation of the city staff carries great weight. Secondly, with respect to water meters are highly reliable. My understanding of this type of meter is that it's basically reliable to plus or minus 0.25%. And in general, we have no evidence that our fairly new water meters are malfunctioning at all. And therefore, in the absence of evidence that the water meter malfunctioned, and there is none, and then it seems to me that the appeal must be denied. And then with respect to the leak question, it's perfectly clear that the leak detection service would not find a leak if all the water were going down the toilet, because it's staying inside the system, and there's no evidence of any water around the property near where the meter itself was. So I feel strongly that this appeal should be denied. The chair will entertain a motion to deny the appeal.
I move to deny the appeal.
And I'll second.
Could I offer some clarification? So the motion, as I construe it, would be to adopt the staff recommendation and resolution in tonight's packet. In addition, I would recommend that the council's motion also incorporate the comments of council into that resolution as the council's findings.
All right. We'll
So
moved. You're fast. All right. Ms. Black?
Councilmember Kroll,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Doring,
Yes.
Pitts,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. All right. That takes us to our next item. Let me see where we are, which is the presentation of the fiscal year 2014 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, affectionately known as CAFR, but CAFR.
That is correct.
As I said to the city manager in email, I wish acronyms had been confined to New Deal agencies, and we never got beyond it.
We'll work on that for you.
I'd just like to take a moment to thank Director Mintz for her work on this. Having just joined the city, this is a huge undertaking, picking up a process that started before she got here. This was a heavy load for her to carry, and I just wanted to thank her for her exceptional work over the last couple months.
Thank you very much. I also want to take a moment to introduce Mark Walsh to you. He is a consultant that has been working with us. He is a CPA. Typically, our auditor would actually be here on site to be able to answer any technical questions. He was not available tonight, so I asked Mark if he could come just in case the council had any technical accounting questions that he could answer after the presentation. So I am going to go through this presentation. This is the first CAFR that Jennifer and I have done for the city of St. Helena, so this is it. I don't believe there has ever been a presentation to the council explaining the CAFR and explaining the components of it. So we did prepare a brief PowerPoint. Everyone has slides in front of them. For the public, we do have some slides in the back. There's little smaller versions, a little harder to see. But I wanted to go through and just explain a little bit about what the CAFR is. As the mayor indicated, it stands for the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or the CAFR. What it is state law does require that local governments publish a complete set of audited financial statements, and that's what's included in the document. The firm of Terry Craig, CPA, was retained to complete the annual audited financials for the city of St. Helena for the year ended June 30th, 2014. The St. Helena CAFR, as do most other CAFRs, they consist of 5 sections. We have an introductory section, a financial session, required and also optional supplementary sections, and a statistical section. In the introductory section, it is a table of contents, a letter transmittal, an organizational chart, and then it's a list of principal officials for the time frame the CAFR represents. So if you notice there's any differences on the current council and the previous council, it's because the names that were on the council that was residing as of June 30th, 2014. The financial section, this is included in the financial section are the basic financial statements. So this is the audited financials. It has the government-wide financial statements. It has the fund financial statements, which are governmental and proprietary. And proprietary are business-like, which is water, wastewater. And it has the notes to the basic financial statements, all of which are composed by our auditor. The required supplemental information, it provides a comparison of the original budgeted amounts, the budgeted amounts after any mid-year budget adjustments have been done, and then the actual audited amounts for the general fund and for Measure A funds. The optional supplemental information, this has 3 elements. It's our non-major governmental funds, comparative statements for major proprietary enterprise funds, and capital assets used in operation of government funds. And the final section is the statistical section, and what that does is that provides everybody with a historical overview, so comparisons can be made from year to year on what had happened. So the meat and potatoes of it is the financial highlights. Most of this is provided in what's called the MD&A, or the Management Discussion and Analysis, at the beginning of the CAFR. So this is a recap of what the MD&A has in it. Is our net position, this is for all funds, which is our proprietary and our government funds. Our net position in 2012-13 at the end of the year was $62.5 million. So our revenues at the end of 2014, they show they increased by 11.4% to $20.04 million. Our expenses increased by 21.7% to $19.85 million. And our net position at the end of 2014 remained virtually unchanged at $62.7 million. So you see the difference is only about $200,000 between the 2 years. Changes in the city of St. Helena's net position for governmental and business type activities. Governmental activities, our net position decreased 2% from 2013. And then for our business type activities, our net position increased by 6% from 2013. Our governmental activity, our revenues. So for governmental activities, our revenues increased by $1.79 million to $12.67 million. The increases in governmental activity revenues were primarily caused by three big items. One is an increase in collection of developmental impact fees, which was about $1.4 million. There is an increase in the use of the city facilities, and there's also an increase in general revenues, primarily tax support. These increases are indicative of a moderate increase in economic activity. For our governmental activities, our revenues, where does the money come from? 71% comes from our transient occupancy tax, or our TOT tax, you'll see. Property sales and other taxes. 24% is for fees charged from fees charged for services. 5% is from local, state, and federal aid. The TOT sales and property taxes increased approximately 8% for 2013. For our governmental activities, our expenses, they increased by $3.26 million in 2014 up to $13.7 million. The $3.26 million increase in the city's governmental activities are primarily related to two items. The first is $1 million for the St. Helena Street Repair Project, and the second is a $1.9 million refund that the city had to pay to FEMA OES relating to flood protection project. For business type activities, our revenues and expenses. Revenues increased by 4% to $7.37 million, and our expenses increased by 5% to $6.15 million. The increases are also attributed to relatively minor changes in activities and normal inflation. Business type activities, so where does this money come from? 96% of it is charges for services, so our water, wastewater, and 4% is from capital grants and contributions. Expenses, where does the money go? So the expenses, this is for governmental and proprietary funds combined. $6.15 million is for business type activities, which is water, wastewater. $2.75 is for general government. $3.64 million is for public safety. $1.37 million is for our library. About $500,000 is for recreation. $1.1 million for highways and streets. $4.17 million for public works, and about $250,000 for all other expenses. And the next page, it has just a pie chart that will give you a quick graphical representation of where the money goes. Capital assets. At the end of 2014, the city has invested $61.54 million in a broad range of capital assets. This is a net increase of a little over $500,000, or 1.1% from 2013. The capital assets that the city has include land, equipment, vehicles, buildings, park facilities, water, and sewer systems. Our long-term debt, the city issued no long-term debt obligations in 2014. All required debt service payments were paid when due. There's two different categories for the debt. The first is our governmental activities, and within governmental activities, we have 6 long-term debt obligations, which total about $9.8 million. And for our business type activities, we have 5 long-term debt liabilities of approximately $16.62 million. For the long term, for our governmental activities, $500,000 is our GO bonds, which is for our fire station. Our capital leases is $1.2 million. Our state revolving fund, or SRF loan, which had to do with our flood project, is $6.6 million. Compensated absences is $500,000, and claims and reimbursements is about $70,000. for long-term debt for business-type activities. There's a Water 2012B bond for $5.4 million, a Water 2000A for $7.2, Wastewater 2012B for $1.5, Wastewater 2005B for $1.7, and then compensated absences is about $300,000. Our general fund balance, and this was something where Jennifer and I really just wanted to kind of explain it, because over the years, there's been changes in how we categorize funds in the CAFR as well as the budget. So we want to take a moment just to explain what the differences are. For the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, what their requirements are now, there's four different types. For us, there's four different types of governmental fund balances listed in the CAFR. They're non-spendable, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. The 2014 CAFR includes a balance sheet for governmental funds. The total general fund balance sheet, or general fund balance on the balance sheet, shows about $3.3 million, and it's broken into two categories. So the first is assigned for economic uncertainties, so we have a little over $1.9 million there, and the second is unassigned, which is $2.3 million for unassigned. And what a historical overview of the general fund is reported in the annual adoption budget, or the budget that's adopted annually. Across the top, it says I think it's unrestricted. We need to change it to comply with the standards to actually unassigned. But in reviewing the previous CAFRs and then also the 2014-15 budget, it was noticed there were inconsistencies, so that's where we kind of wanted to clarify. So on the next page, the very top line where it says original 2014-2015 budget document, across the top, it says the unreserved fund balance. Across that, those are supposed to be, once we get the audited financials for the next budget cycle, they should put whatever the unassigned general fund balance is. That hadn't always been happening, so what we want to do is provide clarification. So the bottom portion of the document where it says per CAFR, this is what it's going to be this is what we're going to change it to so we can stay consistent. So you'll see at the very end where it says the budget 2014-15 CAFR. When we do our mid-year budget review in a couple weeks, we are going to be changing the numbers so it provides more clarity, so you can see that there's unassigned and assigned balances. So our general fund balance, when 2014-15 budget was adopted, it was originally estimated that there would be an unassigned beginning balance of $2.3 million. Once the audited financials came back, that number is actually taken down to $1.3 million, which is about $1 million lower than what they anticipated. And the general fund reserves, which are the assigned amounts, those are still remaining unchanged at $1.97 million. And that is all I have for you. So if you have any questions.
Well, before we get to questions, maybe I should open the public hearing to see whether anybody has any public comment, and then seeing none, let me close the Ms. Dell, sure.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is that it would be nice if you separated out the revenue, the TOT, from the property tax and the sales tax, because there's a lot of conversation in the city about the need to raise more revenue. And so it would really be nice to see those numbers, to see what the difference is and where the city could possibly get more revenue. My question is that $1.9 million that's going back to FEMA, I pretty well kept track of the expenses of the flood control project throughout the process. I was pretty involved with that. I don't remember that the city was going to have to pay back $1.9 million. I'm wondering if you could please fill me in a little bit on that.
All right. Is there any other public comment? And then I'll close the public hearing and we'll ask staff to respond to that question. Seeing no further public comment, I'll close the public hearing, and Ms. Mitz, can you respond to Ms. Dell's question?
Yes, I can. Thank you. As far as the CAFR goes, since those are they're audited financials that are prepared by our auditor, so what they do is under property taxes, they categorize, they lump everything together for the purposes of the CAFR, and that is how the accounting standards are. We have them on our end where we have them broken up, where they're definitely readily available, so we can provide that information. As far as the 1.9 million OES reimbursement, that is something that we discovered as once the audited financials, once we got them back from our auditor. So it is something that both Jennifer and I are doing further research on, and hopefully we're going to have some answers for that pretty quickly. Okay, yes,
Well,
thank you.
On that, I think we should schedule that for a future agenda item, and hopefully fairly shortly. Let me exercise my authority as chair for just a couple of seconds here and see just a couple of quick questions, and then I'm going through your summary and see if I can find my note here. If you turn to the page that says 2013-24 financial highlights, under 2, it says a $1.9 million refund to FEMA OES relating to the flood protection project. Is that what we're talking about? Is that the issue that Ms. Dell is raising?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And so if I'm understanding, this is money that the city has paid back to FEMA through the Offices of Emergency Services, which is a state agency. Too many of these acronyms. All right? FEMA, everybody understands. And is this money coming out of the general fund as opposed to out of one of the proprietary funds?
When the funds were initially booked in our accounting system, they did come from the Measure A fund account. It brought the Measure A fund account in a deficit, and per audited financials, we can't have funds in the deficit, so we did have to take the money from general fund and do an intergovernmental transfer.
Okay. And then can you help me again with respect to this 2013-24 financial highlights? It says 1.9 million assigned for economic uncertainties. I do not understand the accounting entry. What does it mean for something that's assigned for economic uncertainty? I read the Wall Street every day, and everything's uncertain always.
What that would be considered a reserve. So it's typically with most budgets, you usually have a 20 to 25% reserve. So that is what is considered our reserve.
Okay, and when it says unassigned, what does that mean?
Unassigned goes right into the general fund. So you'll see over the years there's some times where it might have $0 amount for unassigned, which means you took the general fund down to a zero balance with not taking into account the assigned funds, which is the 1.9 million.
I think I'm still confused. Does this mean in terms of unassigned that we have
$1.2
million in reserves?
No.
So you have your goal of 25%, which is not a council policy but a goal. So most local governments have some kind of general fund reserve, and they often do it for their proprietary funds as well. And so the goal here is 25%. We're not quite there, but when we assign it, we've assigned it to the general fund. It's an assigned general fund reserve, which means it's technically not touchable. We've put it in a separate account, but it's general fund money, and we've set it aside for any kind of economic uncertainty, any kind of emergency. That's our savings account for the general fund. Any funds above that then are unassigned in the general fund and would be available based on council policy to spend in future years.
Okay, I think that's very clear, and I appreciate it very much. Other members of the council?
Just to follow up on that, so that 1.9 is measured against our total general fund expenditures of 8.4.
What page are you on, so I can
I'm looking actually at this.
At the CAFR?
Yeah.
What page is that?
Page 16, there's a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances.
Page 16. Oh, in the CAFR itself.
Yeah. And the follow-up question to that is, if it's a reserve just in the general fund, do we also have reserves in our other specified funds, right?
So I'll answer the first question. On page 16 of the CAFR, about halfway down, you will see a intergovernmental 1.901700.
Yep.
Do you see that? That's where it was accounted for in this particular sheet.
Oh, no, sorry, my question was the 1.9 of reserves in the general fund, and that's calculated as, and we have that other 1.2 that's unassigned. That 1.9 would be divided by the 8.4 that we spend every year out of our general fund on average, and that's roughly 20%, is that right?
Right, we calculated off of expenditure.
25.
Right, we try to achieve 25%, and it's calculated off expenditures.
Right.
And then set aside.
But expenditures out of the general fund.
Correct, only
That's why
general
we have
fund.
that 8.4 number.
General fund to general fund, correct.
Okay.
And can I just make a comment to Pat's comment earlier? It is broken down on this page, property tax, sales tax, and TOT tax revenue. So if you want me to just, pardon me? It's for the fiscal year ending.
It's not in the handout that you got.
It's not in the handout, no, but it's in this document. And just if you'd like to know, property tax was $3,843,026. Sales tax was $2,594,935, and TOT was $1,732,607.
So just to caution, as Director Mitz mentioned, the property taxes are lumped together. So there's some vehicle in lieu fees in there, so it's bigger. Our actual property tax for that year was $3.3 million.
Oh, okay.
So it's one of those accounting things again.
Okay. But it is broken down.
And also, just so you know, the CAFR is posted online, so if you do go to City of St. Helena's website, you can actually look at the CAFR online, and we do have a copy in City Hall for public viewing as well.
All right, are there other questions of other council members? Yes, Ms.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. It's very important that the council understand our strategy and our intent to be very transparent in what occurred, and that's why it's mentioned several times in the CAFR. The 1.9 million is mentioned in the presentation. Again, as Director Mitz mentioned, it's something that came, and that's the purpose of the audit, is to help us understand what we spent and what we brought in for revenue and how we manage those funds. And so the transparency here and our attempt to disclose the decision that was made to reimburse these funds and how and which funds were used to do that, we wanted to be very clear about that. I will agendize this item once we've done the research and we better understand. I will certainly agendize this item for future discussion.
All right.
I'd also like to just really briefly point out, we are doing a budget update on the 24th, and so the purpose of the second to last slide in your presentation was, again, to be very clear on the impacts. Thankfully, we're starting to see some revenue increases. So some of that 1.9 million was covered through revenue increases that we saw during 13-14. But just to be very clear, so your 14-15 budget, you were told that you have 2.2 million to start. You didn't appropriate all of that in your 14-15 budget, but in reality, there was only 1.3 million available. So it's changed by basically about $1 million. And so we'll bring you a budget update that provides some recommendations now that we have this new information, and that additional $1 million is not available for expenditure.
Okay, and the $1.9 million would have been, had there been Measure A funds, it would have been paid. Would they have qualified for Measure?
We don't know. That's all part of the research.
Right, but the difficulty we have here at the moment is that the payment of the $1.9 million has had the effect of reducing the city's reserves by $1 million, whereas the other $900,000 comes about because of increased revenue.
That's correct.
Wow. Okay. I didn't mean wow. Other than I'm trying to get it through my mind.
Trust me.
Okay. Now I've got. Unless other members of the council have questions, I've got just another question. This goes to page 12 of the CAFR, and it says here, the water and wastewater enterprise funds should generate sufficient revenue to pay for the services they provide. Let me just stop there. And my question to the city staff is whether the council will be presented at some point with an analysis to see whether In fact, our current rates are sufficient not only to pay for services, but for much needed, unfunded, to my understanding, capital improvements.
Yes, you will be. It's something that Public Works Director Palmer and I are working on. It's very important for both water and wastewater that we understand not only the service levels that are necessary to deliver these vital infrastructure and services to our community, but also the necessary infrastructure improvements and maintenance that we need to have. And so we're doing an assessment, and we will be bringing that forward. I don't know if we'll get a rate analysis done for the 15-16 budget. It's something I'd like to do, but that's a major undertaking. But we can do that off budget cycle as well. We could bring it to you in the fall or even January of 2016 and have that rate review. But I do believe that we're going to need to look at our revenue sources and our needs out at both of those sites, both of the facilities and the infrastructure related to them, yes.
Is that study and analysis also looking at the potential for tertiary treatment and water recycling?
Not at this time, no.
Now, this question comes to my mind because in the budget session, I think it was last May, but I could be wrong, I recall vividly that there was an unfunded capital need for Tank 2, both inside and outside work that, don't hold me to the number, but was a large number, $700,000, $800,000, that was not funded through the last rate increase. There are probably others on the water side. Wastewater side, I'm much less familiar with. All right. Any further questions with respect to this presentation? And again, Ms. Mitz, let me join the city manager in praising you for a very clear presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm not sure we've ever had it presented so clearly.
And keep in mind that as we move forward, I'm sure we're going to have more accounting type questions as you seek to educate us on the very precise and technical terms of your trade, if that's okay. All right, well, thank you very much. So let's move on to the next agenda item.
Do we need, I think we need to receive it and accept it through motion.
Do we need to receive and accept?
No.
Did we make the comment that the auditors agreed with the record keeping in the books that have been presented?
Yes, and actually in the beginning, the first couple of pages of the CAFR, it actually does have a letter from Terry, just basically him stating that our accounting practices are solid. So it's in the very front of the CAFR.
I think there's also an accolade in here with respect to the outstanding achievement for accounting practice, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting is presented to the city of St. Helena, which I think is worth noting.
Thank you.
I think we should also give accolades to the Schoendorfs. I don't know who they are, but they have a $103 million property, the highest valuation in the state. Schoendorf. Behringer is next. Also, that the highest TOT producer in St. Helena is the Ambrose Beers House of all. Kind of that surprised me. Are they? Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, those are listed in alphabetical order.
Ambrose Beers, Casa Ladina, El Bonita, Harvest Inn, Hotel de St. Helena,
Right.
Inn at Southbridge, James and Patricia Stone, Napa Valley Hideaway, Vineyard Inn, and White Down Hotel. They're top 10.
Yeah, they are the top 10, and they are in alphabetical.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
They are in alphabetical order.
All right. Right. And I assume
We
that's...
have a little revenue from vacation rentals as well in that TOT category too.
I'll withhold further comment on that. All right. Then let's move on to consideration of 2015 City Council assignments to Monrovia and the Upper Valley Waste Management Board. Ms. Black?
Mr. Mayor and council members, we originally brought this item in its entirety to you the first meeting in January, and we had some questions on Monrovia and the Upper Valley Waste Management. And it is appropriate for Monrovia that the mayor sit as the primary member, and an alternate would need to be designated by the mayor. And then for the Upper Valley Waste Management, we have primary member as Councilmember Kroll, and the alternate is Vice Mayor White. So tonight it is at your pleasure to either affirm or reappoint or make a recommendation for Upper Valley Waste Management Board to the Board of Supervisors, and then it's your pleasure to appoint an alternate for the Monrovia group.
Well, with respect to the Monrovia group, let me take that one first. If Mr. Doring will accept the appointment, I would appoint Mr. Doring.
Okay,
Didn't we go through this a few weeks ago?
when you said appropriate, is that, when you said it's appropriate for the mayor to serve on that, is it required?
Put your mic on.
Sorry. You used the word appropriate for the mayor to serve on that committee. Is he required to serve on that committee? I don't want to.
Yes.
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 Okay. And so are there?
Are there other ones that the mayor is required?
Confused.
Tonight, we're just talking about Monrovia and Upper Waste Valley.
That's it. And with respect to Monrovia, it's an alternate appointment, is it?
Tonight, we need an alternate.
Correct.
That's fine.
Okay, good.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to replace Councilmember Pitts, or that's fine. I mean, I'll be an alternate.
That's
It's all good.
okay. I'm trying to spread these out a little bit.
Yeah, I was confused because I thought we had talked about it, but we weren't clear whether or not we needed an alternate.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
just
Or whether
these
the mayor
two.
was required.
Right.
Right. All right. And then with respect to the Upper Valley Waste Management Agency, say again, we need to specify an alternate?
So we need to reaffirm or reappoint the primary and alternate
All right.
members.
And the primary person at the moment is?
Sharon.
I've been on it.
Do you want to stay on it?
Yeah, it's the only agency that I'm on that's an intergovernmental
Okay.
agency, so for that reason, I would like to stay on it.
All right.
However, if Paul
And
doesn't
if
have one.
somebody else would like to be the alternate, I'd
All right.
abdicate.
Mr. Doring, are you willing to be the alternate there?
That's fine.
Okay. That solves that.
My concern is that Paul doesn't have a primary, he does not have a primary assignment that's an intergovernmental agency. And I don't know if that's, it just seems like it's nice for all of us to have exposure to the other elected officials in the other jurisdictions.
All right. That's not agendized for this
tonight, yeah,
evening.
it's
And
just
so
Monrovia.
keep that in mind and put that on the next agenda. Maybe we can have a discussion, see whether somebody's willing to give up his or her seat on one of the intergovernmental ones, and Mr. Doring can take his or her place. All right. That gets us to the review of the pavement management report, in which Mr. Palmer is the Director of Public Works. Sharon, it's time for you to go.
Do we need a
I'm sorry.
motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I can
Yes.
interrupt one moment, can I just get a motion?
Oh, sorry about
for
that.
the-
All right. Who's going to make the motion?
Motion to approve, let's see, Sharon as primary for Upper Valley Disposal, or not Upper Valley Disposal, but
Upper Valley Waste Management Board.
and Paul as the alternate. So we'll do that one first?
And then, can we,
Sure. And then Monrovia as the mayor and Paul Doring as the alternate.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Council Members Doring,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Pitts,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. So now we get to the review of the pavement management program report, and Councilmember Kroll is going to a deserved basketball game up in Calistoga, so we'll miss her.
So we will never pave your
It's a private road.
All right, Mr. Palmer?
Okay, thank you. I'm standing because I think it's going to help me speak a little better about this. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the pavement management theory concepts, and then also go over the results of a recent update that was done by Nichols Consulting Engineers. So this little chart just shows us a tool we use in pavement management called the Pavement Condition Index, and it's just a quantitative way to evaluate the condition of pavement, and it's utilized throughout the world. And in our area, the methodology to calculate this PCI has been established by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC. That PCI is then used in our pavement management program, which is a computerized database of city roadway network. We do periodic inspections that calculate PCI. It's required. We do it every few years, 2 to 3 years, to go through and do a survey of the streets and calculate this PCI number. And then it's used by this payment management program software to provide analysis and recommendations for a payment maintenance plan. And the one we use in this area is called StreetSaver. This chart illustrates kind of the theory of payment management programs and how they work. You can see on the left-hand side of the chart is the payment condition running from 100 at excellent down to 0 at failed. And then the bottom of the y-axis or x-axis there is the time, so lifespan of the pavement. And you can see that, or what this illustrates is that as you move farther out in time, that curve steepens, and so pavement gets worse quicker. So 75% of its life, you get a 40% drop in quality. And the goal of all payment management programs is to keep stuff up there in the good, keep the payment up in the good to excellent range. And those little scallop things at the top are illustrating that's what happens when we spend money in preservation. So that's crack sealing and slurry seals, the really low-hanging fruit, cheap stuff you can do, and how it extends the lifespan of your pavement. And then as you let pavement get older and it starts to fail, it drops down there towards the bottom of the curve where it says can cost up to $85, that's per square yard, to reconstruct. So the goal of every program is to try and use money efficiently and keep as many of the streets we can up as in the green. So a lot of times what happens is we end up letting pavements that are already past that point of no return, past that 75% spot in the fair area, we let them go. You let them fail because you can't spend enough money to catch them back up again until you do a full reconstruct. Can go on to the next one. So this is just a basic summary of the city's roadway network that was presented in the report by Nichols. We have 26 centerline miles, mile of arterial, 11 miles collectors, 14 residential. Our average PCI for 2014 is 58, as compared to Napa County for the same time range, which is 59, and the California average is 66. I will note the California average is not includes highways. It's only local, so it's city and county numbers, not Caltrans. This little pie chart shows as a percentage which categories our roadways fall in. So 44% of the city's roadways are in good condition, 15.8% are in that fair at risk condition, and 40% is in the poor or failed condition where you're looking at a reconstruction. So the report did a 5-year analysis, and the first step was a calculated needs. So this is to improve the payment average PCI to 80, which is the recommended value by best management practices of MTC and really kind of statewide. They calculated that it would cost $8.9 million to repair all our roads up to average PCI of 80. So the first of the 4 scenarios was running through the current budget, which a 5-year budget, $1.25 million. This is the average we spent over the last 5 years. You can see, or what this chart illustrates, is that deferred maintenance in this scenario increases from $6.2 million. That's our current deferred maintenance right now, backlog of work that we can't do because of funding, goes up to $8.8 million over 5 years. And the PCI decreases from the current level of 58 down to 53. Can turn the slide. The second scenario they looked at was trying to maintain the PCI at its current level of 58. That would require a 5-year budget of $2.5 million. And again, the deferred maintenance increases, this time from $6.2 to $7.5 million. The third scenario they looked at was trying to increase our average PCI by 5 points, bringing it up to 63 points. This would require a 5-year budget of $3.5 million. And again, deferred maintenance increases to 6.5, so it's basically holding steady, the deferred maintenance. So you're not gaining any ground here. You're keeping what you have. Okay, next one. And the scenario 4, which is the one the report recommends, is increasing the PCI to 70. This would bring us up close to good range in a fair, reasonable condition. 5-year budget is $5.6 million. Deferred maintenance goes from $6.2 to $4.3 million. So that would be, this is just a summary of those. The numbers are a little bit off for scenario 1 because I put the staff report together that you've got in the packet with the draft report. The slides were based on the final report I received after the staff report was published. But you can see, trying to get to $8.9 million as a need is very tough to do. It says, 8.9. It's very tough to do with our funding situation. Ideally, we'd be at scenario 4 at $5.6 million. That's what I would like as a professional to recommend to you, and that's what our Nichols Consultants recommends. That concludes the report.
Okay. All right.
I can answer questions if there's any.
Well, let me see whether there's any public comment first with respect to the report. Yes, ma'am.
Sandy Erickson, Scott Street. I'm curious, in light of the fact that for the past 5 years, maybe longer, there's been a concerted effort not to connect certain streets in town, not to have alternatives to Highway 29. The planning document that was reworked heavily directed more traffic onto 29, which meant that the arteries that feed that get more traffic. So I wonder if there could be any sort of analysis, financial analysis, about having more streets connected so that the traffic load and use doesn't impact a few streets very heavily and cause greater damage over a shorter time. It seems like there should be some planning analysis of how streets are used in order to determine how best to economically spread out the repair costs and do it more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Tracy Sweeney, 1407 Kearney Street, speaking as a citizen. And I just wanted to clarify and see if I understand what I'm reading correctly. We had the budget presentation earlier, and if I am understanding, more than half of our roads are in poor condition or failed, but we spend 30% more dollars on our library than on our streets and roads. I love our library. I'm proud it's the second best small library in the country, but I think that we could have a really good library, but doesn't need to be necessarily that good if it's keeping our roads in this kind of condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Any further public comment? Then let me close public comment and open the report up to council discussion. Mr. Doring, do you have any initial comments?
I didn't hear anything about revenues, Steve. Where's the money coming from?
Well,
Mr. Palmer, sorry.
Yeah, the current budget, we've got about $136,000 from gas tax, and then remaining from general funds. So the prior 5 years, the numbers I quote up there, was like $93,000 a year from gas tax went to street maintenance, and then $152,000 from general fund went to street maintenance.
What is our projected revenue when Measure T comes on board?
So Measure T is $16.8 million over this 25 years. That's the latest projection. So that's about $670,000 a year.
To St. Helena?
To St. Helena.
And when will that start funding?
2018.
18. Okay. I just wanted to make a comment. I think, there are a lot of priorities in the city's budget, and to isolate one and say, well, we can take more money from that particular department and put it to roads, I think it's a matter of what the community wants and the priorities, because you can say the same thing with any department, that any department is theoretically overfunded or not, and that we should use that money for streets and roads. So I don't know if it's any one department, certainly not necessarily the library would be the one that's causing our roads not to be maintained. So,
well, I think this is going to be in our session of February 27 as we move forward here. I think the purpose here is just to receive and understand the report. Mr. Pitts?
I have one question. Have any communities, I sort of think of the roads, and it's hard to measure, but it is infrastructure and a service that people are provided, much like wastewater and water. Has anyone creatively figured out how can you assess some sort of fee for road use in other communities so that there could actually be more of a revenue generator? I know it's a little bit of a crazy idea, but is there any precedent?
The only experience I have personally with it is in one city we established street maintenance districts for new development, but it's very difficult to go back over existing residents and charge them a use fee for that.
It's hard to figure out how to allocate it fairly, but I hear from everyone, our roads are horrible, how are we going to fix them? We don't have a solution in sight. It's something maybe worth thinking about.
Well, I think, again, this is going to be a discussion at the February 27 meeting. I just have, do you have any further questions, Mr. White?
No questions. I just would like to, I guess, say great job on narrowing down and actually coming up with some plans, even though we don't have the money to do it. But at least we've got an idea of what the, I guess what the impact is on the budget going forward.
Yeah, I must say one of the disheartening aspects of this to me is that the folks in town that have the worst roads are also under this analysis, which is a cost-benefit efficiency type analysis, are going to be about the last to get their roads repaired, which is very, very unfortunate from a fairness point of view, quite frankly. But my question is this, does the city maintain a schedule, is it online, that shows residents when their streets are scheduled, if they are scheduled to be repaired?
No, we don't have that at this time. And the plan would be to bring forward, as part of the budget, the workshop on 27th, and as part of the budget, some kind of payment management plan that's based on this document, but it's not, it probably won't follow it exactly street by street, segment by segment, because there are other considerations taking effect, like safety, public safety, and some locations geographically, it makes more sense to group some streets together. So this is our guiding tool, but when it comes to putting together the budget and an actual plan, it may be slightly different.
All right.
We did have a schedule about a year and a half ago. Has that been discontinued because the funding to keep up with the schedule doesn't exist?
There is a map on the website that does show some of that information. It just hasn't been maintained.
I think in 2013, certain things got done, and I think in 2014, it hasn't continued.
Correct. And can you give me just the number once again as to what we've spent on streets and street maintenance on average over the past 5 years? I think you had that number right there.
Right, yeah, on average over the past 5 years, it is, I gotta go back, it's $250,000 per year on average last 5 years. And that is greatly skewed by the project from 13-14. That was the major expenditure, was almost $1 million. And so that does skew it greatly.
Okay. Well, any other questions of Mr. Palmer? It was a very fine presentation, very clear. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go back to my agenda. Oh, we have even no agenda forecast down here. But in any event, I'm just looking at the agenda. There's no agenda forecast item on the agenda, so I guess that's it. All right.
Do we have to move to accept and receive the report? Okay.
All right, very good. Then the meeting stands adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.